All right, let's dive right in. We're about to explore something absolutely fundamental, what you are actually made of. To do this, we're going to have to shrink way, way down and take a look at the basic building block of all life. So, I've got a question for you, and I mean a big question. Forget about skin, bones, all that stuff for a second. What are you really made of? What's the tiny microscopic unit that builds every single part of you? The answer? Well, believe it or not, you're made of trillions upon trillions of tiny, bustling cities. Yeah, cities. Each one is its own little metropolis, working around the clock just to keep you going. So grab your microscopic tour pass, because we are heading inside one of these incredible cell cities right now.
Okay, so this whole city idea, it's not just some fun analogy I made up. It's actually grounded in one of the most important ideas in all of biology, the cell theory. You could think of this theory as the master blueprint that helps us understand, well, all life as we know it.
But we didn't just figure this out overnight. It was a long journey. It all started way back in 1665. A guy named Robert Hooke was looking at cork under a microscope and saw these little boxes. He called them cells. Then, fast forward over 150 years to the 1830s, and two scientists, Schleiden and Schwann, had this huge realization. Everything alive is made of these cells. The final piece of the puzzle, that came from Rudolf Virchow, who figured out that all new cells have to come from cells that already exist. Boom! Those three ideas together, they literally built the foundation of modern biology.
All right, tour is officially starting. And just like any city tour, we're going to start at the city limits. Let's go check out the border control, the structures that protect and define everything happening on the inside. So first up, we have the plasma membrane. Now think of this as the city's super selective border security. It's this flexible barrier made of fats and proteins, and it acts just like a bouncer at an exclusive club, very carefully deciding what gets in and what gets kicked out. Its whole job is to keep the inside of the city perfectly stable. But what if our city was a plant cell? Well, then we'd see an extra layer of security. This is the cell wall. And this thing isn't just a fence, okay? It's more like a massive, rigid fortress made out of something called cellulose. This wall is what gives the plant cell its fixed, boxy shape and provides some serious structural support and protection.
Okay, we're through security. Let's head inside the city gates. Time to explore the bustling streets and find the all-important command center, the central government that runs this whole show. So, the second we're inside, we find ourselves floating in this stuff called the cytoplasm. And let me tell you, this is not just empty space. It's this thick, jelly-like fluid, and it's packed with all the city's little structures. We call them organelles that we're about to meet. This is the environment, the main stage, where all the city's work actually happens. And right there, at the very heart of it all, we find the nucleus. This is City Hall, the command center, the big boss. Because tucked away inside of it is the master blueprint for everything, the DNA. And from here, the nucleus directs every single activity in the cell, telling all the other parts exactly what to do and when to do it. Super important. Okay, so we've seen the command center. Now it's time to check out the infrastructure, the power grid. Let's go meet some of the specialized workers, those organelles we mentioned, that keep this entire metropolis humming along 24/7. So, first things first, no city can run without power, right? And that absolutely crucial job belongs to the mighty mitochondria. I bet you've heard them called the powerhouse of the cell before, and trust me, they've earned that title. So inside these little power plants, a process called cellular respiration is going on all the time. They're basically taking in food and converting it into pure, usable energy called ATP. You can think of ATP as the cell's version of cash. It's the energy currency that pays for literally every single job that needs to get done in the city. All right, the city's got power. Now what? Well, with all that energy, it's time to build stuff. So our next stop is the city's sprawling industrial district, the endoplasmic reticulum. It's this huge network totally dedicated to manufacturing. So this network, we'll just call it the ER for short, it has two pretty different neighborhoods. You've got the rough ER, which looks bumpy because it's covered in these tiny little factories called ribosomes. Their job is to crank out proteins. Then you've got the smooth ER, which does something totally different. It's in charge of making lipids, or fats, and also handles detox, getting rid of nasty stuff. Okay, so the factories in the ER are making all these proteins and lipids, but they can't just sit there on a factory floor, right? Nope, they need to be sorted, packaged up, and shipped out to the right address. And for that, our cell city has an incredibly efficient postal service. And that postal service is called the Golgi apparatus. It is a total marvel of logistics. Check this out. Step 1, it receives the raw products from the ER. Step 2, it modifies them, kind of like quality control. Then, step 3, it packages them up into these little transport bubbles called vesicles and ships them off to their final destination. And that could be anywhere, across the cell, or even all the way outside the city. Now, think about it. Any busy city produces a ton of trash. And if you don't deal with it, things get messy fast, and everything just grinds to a halt. So how does our cell city stay clean? Well, it has its own dedicated waste management and recycling crew, the lysosomes. And they have a pretty dramatic nickname. So lysosomes are basically these little sacs filled with super powerful digestive enzymes. They just roam around the cell like a cleanup crew, breaking down garbage, taking out invaders like bacteria, and recycling old, worn-out cell parts. They're so powerful, in fact, that they're called suicide bags. Why? Because if one of them were to accidentally burst, those enzymes would be strong enough to digest the entire cell from the inside out. Whoa. Okay, so we've had a pretty good tour of the essential machinery of a cell city. But you know what? Not all cities are built from the same blueprint. To wrap things up, let's compare the two major types of cities you'll find out there: plant cells and animal cells. Really, the biggest difference boils down to one thing: structure versus flexibility. An animal cell is kind of like a flexible, mobile city. It doesn't have that rigid wall, so it can change its shape. But a plant cell, it's a fortress. It's built for stability, all thanks to that big, rigid wall we talked about earlier. This chart here lays out the key differences really clearly. You'll see that the cell wall and things called plastids, which include chloroplast for photosynthesis, you only find those in plant cells. And look at the vacuole, which is like a water storage tank. Plants have one giant central one. Animal cells, they have a bunch of smaller ones. All of these little differences add up to that big difference in their overall shape. Plants are fixed and structured, while animals are irregular and flexible. So just take a second and let that sink in. Every single one of the trillions of cells in your body is an incredibly intricate, self-sustaining city, and they're all working together in perfect harmony. Which leaves us with one last kind of mind-blowing thought to chew on. If just one of those tiny cells is this complex, what in the world does that make you?